World This Week. The World This Week in partnership with the International Herald Tribune. Ana Navarro Pedro Vizao is with us. Also with us, Judah Grunstein of World Politics Review. Anthony Bélanger of Arte, the Franco-German television station, and France 24's Lila Jacinto. Yes, as we were saying earlier, 10 years and counting when Al-Qaeda launched the attacks of September 11th, 2001, with its corollary, you'll remember, the assassination 48 hours earlier of the Northern Alliance leader Ahmed Shah Massoud. This was the response: the ousting of Osama bin Laden's backers in Kabul, the Taliban. 10 years on, it's the start of the drawdown. Is it a given, though, that the Taliban, one day in the not-too-distant future, Leela, will be able to stroll back into Kabul?
You know, for 10 years, I have been saying that's not necessarily the case. And I think for the first time, I'm starting to have a bleak picture. It does not look like, the Taliban is going to be held back. I have a feeling it's going to roll in.
And what makes you say that?
Well, it's funny. I mean, if you talk about 10 years, it seems like, without being unduly immodest, but, at every step, I was saying these things, and it seems like, all these lessons we just did not learn from the start. In 2001, we chose Pakistan as a partner, General Parvez Musharraf. You don't choose a Pakistani military man to cut down an Islamist. 10 years now, and we've realized the level of the deception. The Iraq War came, a year after the Iraq War, you start saying, have to keep the focus on Afghanistan. Did not happen. The international mission, all these contracts, which are not really, helping the Afghan people, did not change. Obama comes in, we expect his big Afghanistan speech, which is going to say a surge, we're going to go for it. He announces a surge and then the withdrawal. It's too late now.
Judah Grunstein, can we just apply the analogy of a corrupt regime in South Vietnam, 1973?
It's worse than that.
Where once the U.S. left, it was only a matter of time.
I think that it's very hard, I think, to argue a very optimistic horizon for Afghanistan. At the same time, I think that and it's also very hard to defend the record of the post-invasion nation-building mission, because it's been actually a record of some very bad ideas well applied, which is the worst. Some really good ideas poorly applied. Some good ideas that weren't followed up on. I don't think I think what you were saying is true, that there are lessons learned, and we have learned lessons. We just have consistently failed to apply them. That said, is the Taliban going to roll into Kabul? I don't know if there's a way to predict that. I think there certainly will not be an end to the fighting, and there certainly looks like there will be a civil war. I think that it's very possible,
All right,
though.
One man, in any case, who this week thought of something he could try is the president, Hamid Karzai, who, upon the killing of his government peace envoy, Burhanuddin Rabbani, the former president, made a trip to India, where he signed a strategic partnership deal. This says Kabul and Washington both accused the Pakistanis of backing those who killed Rabbani. And in India, Karzai playing good cop and bad cop.
When I'm asked about Pakistan and India, I say Pakistan is a twin brother. India is a great friend. The agreement that we signed yesterday with our friend will not affect our brother. We have now decided to not talk to the Taliban because we don't know their address. We don't know where to find them. And when we find them, we will talk to them. Therefore, we have decided to talk to our brothers, our neighbors in Pakistan.
So this is the same press conference, Ana Navarro Pedro. On the one hand, he says that Pakistan's our twin brother. On the other hand, he says, if I want to speak to the Taliban, I go see the Pakistanis.
Yes, but you remember Karzai, when the Americans brought him in, everybody was saying it was a perfect pick for his head. And he has proved that right so far. He was a petrol employee in some, oil company in the United States, and brought in for more his good looks,
No, it's
and
not really true. He was involved in Afghan politics for a
but
very long time.
the problem now is, he's on a tight spot because the NATO is going to pull out at some point from very near from Afghanistan. The problem with this war that has been lost, and for 5 years now, all military I know have told that this war is being lost. It's because right from the beginning, it was not set up as a war, but set up as a stabilization operation. For that, you have goals, material, men, and logistics that are totally different. And this was a very military problem right from the beginning. Second problem is the war is launched on very edgy ground because it was after September the 11th. We didn't know why they went to hit Afghanistan. Remember, just a few months before, United States were having deals directly with the Taliban in Berlin. Mm-hmm. In order to have some deal with them, to have pipelines going through Afghanistan with oil, and to avoid all countries that might be under Russian hand. So everything that was, all the reasons for why the West went, United States and then NATO and the Western countries went behind NATO into Afghanistan were wrong, they were misled, it was cynical, hypocritical, and of course, in the end, it gives what is happening now, a war that is lost by the first military alliance in the world.
I have to disagree with that view. I mean, that pipeline has been in the pipeline forever. There were definitely negotiations in a way that Washington would have kept all the doors open.
And
but
in a way that
this
every
was
government was at that period of time
nobody
negotiating with the Taliban.
Nobody expects that pipeline to happen. That's a pipe dream. This was happening right after, if you remember, the statues of the Bamiyan came down. The international community had reached the Taliban had really blown it, literally. 9/11, of course, gave the impetus for the military invasion. But Al Qaeda had their bases there. I went there, and about cynical. I mean, it was. I've seen targeted strikes.
What strikes me about that war is that, well, I was just reading the Los Angeles Times something like 2 days ago, and then there was an article saying that it was the longest conflict ever in the history of the United States, longer than Vietnam, which was 101 months. I just put on the numbers, and Afghanistan is they're running the Afghan conflict for more than 120 months. Which is because we are used to it, but at the end, it's 10 years of war in a country far away from the United States, and it's the longest conflict ever in the history of the United States, which is
amazing.
That's
also weighing
in a
on
way.
Domestic politics, which brings us to our next topic, which is where you find the money for anything. And by the way, another precinct heard from in an increasingly polarized U.S. political landscape are protesters on Wall Street, growing in size, and this week even getting the backing of some trade unions. This movement spreading now even to other cities.
See this grow. Our country is being taken over by a small minority of people who rig the system, all in their favor, and it's got to stop.
Now, when New York City police used a heavy hand, that triggered this comment that we'll read to you from Twitter. It's official. More people have been arrested for protesting Wall Street than for crashing our economy. Judah Grunstein, is this just a fringe element?
Well, I think it might have started as a fringe element, but the nature of this kind of movement, and especially at this moment, globally and in the United States, is that there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of discontent, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anger, and this kind of movement can resonate very easily with that. And I think that since it started, what we've seen is that it's being the numbers are being boosted by people who don't necessarily want to loot the banks or string up the bankers. They graduated from college and they can't get a job. They're in
That's
debt.
it.
They're
That's-
trying to pay for their houses and they've been fired and they're unemployed.
the
So
basic-
Anthony Bélanger, that sounds like Europe.
No, but you've got to understand about the United States that the basic social issue in the United States is jobs. And right now you've got you've got 9.1% of the population out of job. But if you consider all the people looking for a job or even who abandoned the idea of seeking a job, you've got 16% of the population in the United States, which is huge for a country which is used to less, which is huge and very important. You can be elected or defeated, in any election just because of jobs. Job and taxes. If you want to know something about the United States, just go on with that, with those two names.
Interesting that you
two
say
words.
that because two candidates who were on the more vociferous kind, perhaps, especially Sarah Palin, have announced that they're not running. Their race for the Republican nomination crystallizing slightly. The popular New Jersey governor, Chris Christie, said this week he would not run, and neither will Palin. Overall, when you weigh up, on the one hand, the pressure from the left, the fact that these two big names who are popular are not running, has it been a good week or a bad week for Barack Obama?
Well, I don't think the people who are on Wall Street now have necessarily coalesced around Obama, but I think they could potentially be a base for Obama when it comes to the crunch of,
Or they could
facing
decide not to go vote on election day.
Right. So I'm not really looking at this as a good
But they're
sign
not
for
as
Obama.
big as the Tea Party for the Republican Party. I mean, they're not as influential as the Tea Party is for the Republican.
No, there's a
far
problem.
left, I say.
But let me just say this: the reason, for instance, that Christie isn't running is because he would be absolutely unacceptable to the Tea Party.
That's it.
Palin's not running because she's not actually as popular as she might like to believe, and that she's been built up as. The problem that the Republican Party is facing right now is actually the problem of the Tea Party, because to win the Republican nomination right now, you have to satisfy this fringe faction that cannot put the same candidate over in the general election.
French but influential.
So the problem Obama might be facing regarding all of this is that whether he can, when push comes to shove, bring these people back into the fold or not. If he can, I think he's got it made, because at this point it looks like the Republicans are sort of running the same kind of campaign that the Democrats ran in 2004. Anyone but Obama, with the most radical person gaining some momentum, but eventually it looks like they're going to settle for Romney, who is not going to be able to generate the same momentum with the base, similar to what happened with John Kerry.
But we have to think about how people are going to react. This movement in Wall Street is not just a fringe movement. It's not coordinated. It doesn't have a very definite goal. But what that activists were saying, we saw him earlier saying, this is a rip-off in the world. This is a rip-off. And this notion, it's really gaining momentum in the United States, in Europe.
I don't buy that.
That it's a rip-off?
No, that is an important movement in the United States. You can say
No,
of
I'm not saying this. We have
st-
to stop and see how it will go from here. Because of course the problem
And
is to
it'll
have
be
a
interesting
defined.
to see how
That's what I said.
whether
They
or
don't
not
have
they can
coordination.
whether or not they can sustain it at this point.
Exactly.
That's where the
Before we go,
union support is going to kick in terms of organization.
And we'll have to see how those unions go. We're going to move on because we're running a little bit low on time to talk about the tributes that continue to pour in for a man who one guest on this set on Thursday likened to Gutenberg. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs losing his battle with cancer at 56. Here you see some of the tributes. There you go, Albert Einstein. And this the call for his successor. And we've been seeing a lot of cartoons. And, Leila, you're at the internet desk, so I suppose, we're in the eye of the storm. But even on the other side, where we're not as savvy with a mouse, it was amazing to see on Thursday the passionate debate, and that these inanimate objects that are the iPad and the iPhone, and that they stir. People were having passionate arguments about this
Right.
stuff.
I have to say, I didn't get it.
No, personally,
I went ahead and on my Facebook page, I posted something saying, can't wait for the hagiographic fiesta to end. I don't see him. I don't see a Steve Jobs Foundation. I don't see any public,
she's
giving
right.
to charity despite his multi-billion-dollar worth. And I paid good money for my, visionary products. So what is this? And and I was like, whoa. So some of our readers accused me of vilifying The Departed, but a number of what I call the silent majority were just clicking like, because I think they had found it a bit too much. I mean, so what is this? What is this a statement on? Making him a hero? Your gizmos
She's
work.
absolutely right.
Your gizmos
Exactly.
work, and they're very well designed. Okay, does that make you, I do not want to vilify The Departed. I mean, fine, but, this level of, what is this mania?
It was not even Princess Diana's.
Wait, 1 minute here. He did change the world, Judah Grunstein.
He really changed the world. 10% market share doesn't mean you've changed the world. He changed not even the way people live. He changed the way people buy. And where and when they
spend
buy.
more
He
money,
made it
willingly.
everywhere and all the time. I don't buy it. I don't think history is going to be very kind to the impact he had on the internet and on information. And that said, though, I would have much preferred having this discussion last Friday than this Friday, because I do feel uncomfortable talking about
And
someone
he
who
was
just
leading a
died.
kind of sectarian movement. Have you ever seen a PR presentation of Steve Jobs? It was like a mask,
Right.
It was like a religious
And on top
movement.
of it,
I call
did
it the
he pay
cult of
good salaries?
Appletology.
Did he
You're
pay
right.
good benefits to his employees? Did that huge amount of
Interesting
money
to
you
see
can
that
pay for his articles was part
The
of it
people
going
from
to-
the tech world we had on this set were
his
saying
employees?
sort of the odds were the other way around when we talked about this
I
issue
tell
on
you a tech
Thursday.
story that I really find useful is, this week the Indian government has this tablet for $35, giving it to poor people. I think that's more interesting.
All right, a final note before we go. Another important figure to the media in this particular town has passed away. He's not a household name, except for photojournalists. Gurkshan Sipayoglu, a great photographer before founding Sipa Press, one of the world's premier photo agencies. A true patron de presse, as we call him here, willing to take risks and irreverently chase a story. Should tell you, at age 18, I had a summer internship in the zany, wacky place that was Sipa Press, filing photos in the archives. Like so many journalists in this town, Gurkshan cut me my first break. He'll be buried in Istanbul. Gurkshan Sipayoglu was 84. We will miss him. And I want to say thank you to all of you. Judah Grunstein, Lila Jacinto. I want to thank Anthony Bélanger and Ana Navarro Pedro. And thank you for being with us for The World This Week.